Welcome to PM Express Business Edition. The Bank of Ghana has rolled out additional measures to try to help to stabilize the Ghana cedi as well as deal with the rising inflation rate. But can these measures really do the trick? Or some have argued that it is a supply-driven inflation and more fiscal issue rather, and that is where we should be turning our attention to. But in all these, how can businesses and even the larger economy be affected by these actions, and what should be done? I'll be engaging the Chief Executive of the Ghana Association of Industries, or Cedis Akwaboah. He will tell us what do businesses make of it. Suleiman Kony is Chief Executive of the Ghana Chamber of Mines. And if you go through the Bank of Ghana statement, there is talk about engaging those in the extractive sectors, that is oil and gas, and the mining firms will be getting more from the CEO of the Ghana Mining Chamber of Mines. So what do they make of it? William Boateng is the head of economics at the accounts department at the University of Ghana, Legon, and also Dr. Sam Ankra, president of the African Investment Group, from the investment community, from the business sector, as we talk about the city's instability and inflation rate. Can the Bank of Ghana measures really help or save us? Can the anchor hold? All these issues wrapped up on PM Express Business Edition. We'll take a short break and we will be right back. Welcome back to PM Express Business Edition. As we talk about the city's instability, inflation, can Bank of Ghana's recent measures help or not? Well, today I'll be connecting with my guest via Zoom. I'll be talking to Professor Boateng. He's the head of the economics department at the University of Ghana, Legon. Cedis Akwaboah is Chief Executive of the Association of Ghana Industries. Suleiman Kony, Chief Executive of the Chamber of Mines. And if you go through the Bank of Ghana statement, and if you can roll right now the measures that the Bank of Ghana introduced, the industry, that is the mining and the oil and gas, are going to play a critical role with respect to what the Bank of Ghana is planning to do to help stabilize the Ghana cedi. And we'll be getting from him what does the chamber make of these measures and how far they've gone with these discussions as well. Dr. Sam Ankra is president of the African Investment Group, and we'll be engaging the business sector as well. In all these things, how does it impact your operations? And what do you have to do if you're a businessman? The impact on you, the cost of credit is going to go up, and whether it's a bitter pill that we have to take right now. So let's just run through the recent measures that the Bank of Ghana actually rolled out to help stabilize the Ghana cedi. And if you look at the graph there, that gives us the trend of inflation rate from 14.5% to 17, 19%, 19 stabilized, and then 22%. Now let's run through the measures that the Bank of Ghana has rolled out. The primary reserves requirement for these commercial banks have been raised from 12% to 15%, and they will be implemented in phases. We have 13%, that is from September 1, 14% from September, that is October 1, and 15% from the 1st of November 2022. And this is the money that the commercial banks are expected to hold at the Bank of Ghana. And it's one way in trying to mobilize excess liquidity in the system to the central bank. The Bank of Ghana is also working to collaborate with the mining firms and international oil companies and their banks to purchase all their foreign exchange arising from the voluntary repatriation of export proceeds from these mining firms, as well as the oil and gas companies. This is expected to strengthen the Bank of Ghana's foreign exchange auction on the market. So, but I know that some of you will be asking yourself, and so what? How does this affect you and I? We'll be getting more answers, but let me get on to the Zoom connection. And first, let me connect with the head of the accounts department at the University of Ghana, Legon, Professor William Boateng. Prof, thank you so much for connecting with us, and also my other guests, Cedis Akwaboah, Suleiman Kony, and Dr. Ankra. But let me first start with the economists, because some will say it's all about the economy. And for you, what do you make of these measures?
Good evening to my colleagues, and good evening to our cherished viewers. Well, I think the Bank of Ghana, per the Act, and what they are supposed to do is to control depreciation of the exchange rate and also control inflation. So the Bank of Ghana currently is confronted with these two challenges. And if you look at macroeconomic management, inflation and exchange rate currently, because Ghana's economy is tied to the global economy. So whenever exchange rate misbehaves, it translates into inflation, and feedback effect also goes to exchange rate. So the Bank of Ghana is confronted with these two challenges, and they need to look at how best they can tame the two. Now, I know that many people have commented on the fact that if you raise the policy rate, it means that you are asking or maybe compelling commercial banks to also raise their lending rate. But I think we need to put it in perspective. When you break inflation at 1.7% as we have now, we have an imported inflation element. And the imported inflation element can be attributed to two major factors. One, inflation in foreign countries. So, for instance, if we are importing from the US, or let's say we are importing from UK, and UK is experiencing inflation, when we buy stuff from the UK, we are expected to have the prices go up, and therefore when we import, we bring them to Ghana, even if the exchange rate remains the same, it will reflect on our inflation. But the major one is the depreciation of the cedi. So as the cedi depreciates, it also finds its way on inflation. And therefore, if Bank of Ghana is looking at the two and realizes that the imported inflation element is there, then the first thing is to look at how they can control the exchange rate. Now, if you raise the policy rate and then you are afraid that it's going to affect lending rate, then you have to look at the other side of it, that if the Bank of Ghana still maintain the policy rate at 19% and inflation at 1.7%, are the commercial banks going to wait and say that we are going to lend it to you because the central bank has kept it at 19%? The commercial banks will not only look at what the central bank will do, they will look at the inflation. So long as inflation rate is high, they will also peg their lending rate to ensure that the money that they give out will not go waste. So when inflation is going up, commercial bank will not just look at the policy rate, but they will look at inflation. And therefore, we don't have to look at policy rate as the main thing that is going to drive lending rate. It is the rate of inflation currently that is are going to drive lending rate. And therefore, the Bank of Ghana then looks at the policy rate and also look at what is happening in the global market. Because interest rate in US, interest rate in other countries are going up because they are also fighting their inflation. And then they look at where the exchange rate depreciation is coming from. Now, if you look at the balance of payment account, you realize that the major problem is coming from the capital account, because foreign investors holding our domestic bonds are flying out their investment. So what can be done to tame that kind of demand for foreign currency being as a result of investors going up? So if you raise the policy rate, then you are trying to change or shift the focus of investment locally. So those who thought they have to send their money back because they are not getting the best returns will then think twice. So if demand is able to tame, and then the exchange rate, the exchange rate does not go up, but it remains at it is, then it means that you have given the first dose to the patient, and then you can then think about what best can be done to also look at the other side. So for me, the Bank of Ghana could have even gone higher than the 300 basic point, but I think the optimum as it is 300 basic point. And remember that all of us are commenting on what the central bank has done, but you don't have the data. But from where I sit, I think if I want to put myself in the Bank of Ghana's shoes, I think the data may show that we have excess liquidity. Because when people have excess liquidity in their hands, they want to diversify their portfolio. So if they realize that the cedi is crumbling against the dollar, then they will look at whether they have to invest in security or they have to buy dollars. So if they look at the returns from investment in security, and it is lower than if they are able to invest in dollars. The dollar will depreciate and they are going to gain more in local currency. Then they will shift their attention there. So if I am the Bank of Ghana, then I will want to shift their attention from buying dollars as a store of value to buying securities by raising the policy rate, raising the T-bill rate, raising the interest rate in general, so that I can shift the focus of people who have excess liquidity to buy dollars. And if I'm able to do that by using the interest rate, then I'm able to reduce the demand for foreign currency. And therefore, at least if it slows down, speculators will also then will realize that the Bank of Ghana is doing something, or what we think was going to happen has now gone down, and therefore they can have more time to think about what other medium-term measures to be able to bring down inflation. And that is what I think informed the Bank of Ghana's decision to raise the policy rate.
Prof, I'll be coming back to you about this argument about whether our challenge right now is a fiscal issue and the Bank of Ghana has gotten to the end of the road, or we should stop pushing pressure on the Bank of Ghana to act and look at the fiscal side. But let me bring in the chief executive of the Chamber of Mines, Suleiman Kony. And in all these measures that were announced, they are going to play a critical role when it comes to those in the extractive space. And also to find out from him, how's the sector itself doing and what does the outlook like? Suleiman Kony, chief executive of the Ghana Chamber of Mines, thank you for joining us on this discussion. I mean, were you surprised, or it was something that was already being talked about when the statement said that the Bank of Ghana will be engaging you to help us with some of your reserves or your FX? Mr. Kony, if you can unmute your Zoom, I'll be so grateful, please.
Thank you very much, George. And good evening to viewers and fellow panelists. In response directly to your question, this has been in the works for a while. We have a good relationship with the Bank of Ghana, and we have been having conversations about how we can use the mining industry to really support our economy. It didn't start today. About 2 years ago, we started a conversation with the Bank of Ghana, especially on the gold purchase program of the Bank of Ghana. And again, on the question of Forex, about 6 years ago, we had a situation where the actually Forex regime regarding repatriation was also tweaked, essentially on the advice of the IMF, that rather than mining companies, paying the retention to the Bank of Ghana, the approved retention to Bank of Ghana, rather it should be actually supplied to the mining company, to supply to the commercial banks. So we've had series of conversations pertaining to both issues around the sale of the gold to the Bank of Ghana, as well as the issue of the sale of Forex to the Bank of Ghana. But in all these, we see a grand arrangements, more especially around the sale of the gold to the Bank of Ghana. We believe that that is a game changer because traditionally mining companies have generally sold their Forex proceeds partly to the Bank of Ghana as well as to the commercial banks. So what has actually changed in the last few months, the narrative essentially has to do with the gold purchase program, which we are actually discussing seriously with the Bank of Ghana and also amongst ourselves. We know that even ahead of the announcement, one of our member companies went ahead to sell about $100 million worth, forward sales to the Bank of Ghana, and in return they had Ghana Cedis. So essentially similar to the gold purchase program, because the novelty has to do with the currency of purchase, which is in the Ghana Cedis. So yes, we are not surprised about these conversations or these policies pronouncements, because we've had intimate conversations with the Bank of Ghana in the last few years.
Mr. Kony, one would want to find out or ask from you. I mean, you have multinationals, your members, they have agreements, stability agreements with governments and all over the world and even in this country as well. How easy is it for you, not to get into any specifics, but some are saying that they are already established agreements and these things might be pushing you and your members against the wall to act. Are you that prepared to work things out?
Well, we are not in normal times, George, and we are a core part of the economy. When you are hosted by a country and a country is in difficulty, I think when you call yourself a responsible industry, you would expect that you engage with the government to see what you can do for the country to actually go through its challenges smoothly. The reality is that mining companies bring back to the country so much USD, Forex, by way of the revenues that they generate. And these monies actually go to support the operations, pay salaries, pay for various inputs, whether it is diesel, whether it is power, and various consumables. So already a lot of it actually comes back. On average, you're talking about 75%. Last year, for example, we did in excess of 80% coming back to the country.
80% of what? Sorry,
of revenue.
Of your revenue?
Of mineral revenue, exactly.
The entire industry?
So, yes.
Okay.
Yes. And you would ask yourself, so what has changed? What has changed in the last few years is this recent drive to push hard on local value add, local procurement, and so on and so forth. So even as you have local entrepreneurs being in a position to supply the kinds of goods and services that the mining industry needs, indirectly it actually affects the Forex flow as well, because then companies are compelled to actually bring the Forex here to support their operation. So it's a good thing that we continue to push the envelope on local content, local procurement. The watchword, though, is to make sure that these are fit for purpose and they are in a position to help the industry to actually thrive. So yes, we bring in quite a bit. Last year, like I said, about 80%. So the reality is that what has changed is what I referred to, that because of that policy change about 6 years ago, that instead of selling Forex through the retention arrangement to the Bank of Ghana, mining companies were actually requested to sell to their commercial banks.
Okay.
So the only change has to do with now Bank of Ghana is now stepping in and saying that, look, I want to be a part of the game. And the voluntary part, so there are two streams. You have the voluntary returns as well as the mandatory surrender, which now has to go to the commercial banks, and then the mining companies would have to report on to the Bank of Ghana. So with that gap, so if you're bringing, for example, 85%, and on the average, about 30 or 25 to 30% is the mandatory surrender. You are talking about a difference of about 50% thereabout. And that is the voluntary portion which the Bank of Ghana is requesting that ideally a portion of that should come to the Bank of Ghana as well. And I don't believe that this would be something for in the long haul. We are in a very difficult situation. And I think it is quite apt for the Bank of Ghana to have engagements with us to see what we can do as an industry to support the economy.
So, Mr. Coney, it's not something that, anybody is putting the gun to your head, and your members, are committed to this, and they would indeed be surrendering these FX.
The reality is that you want a situation where you help your country, whilst at the same time making sure that your operations are not adversely affected. So, like I said, a lot of Forex comes into the country through the mining industry. And certainly there is no gun being put at our head. I think we are a responsible industry, and we need to do what we can to support our country, and also making sure that even as we try to support our country, our operations are not adversely affected.
Mr. Coney, just not to box you down to the exact numbers, you talked about bringing in 85% of revenue. That is how much are we looking at here? I mean, not the exact numbers, but even the round figure, please, for last year or even 2021 or 2020.
Last year, our revenue was about 8 billion. No, about 5 billion, sorry.
$5 billion.
Last year, our revenue was about 5 billion. And we are talking about an average of about 75%. Last year, the return was about 80%. But I'm talking about an average over last 5 years or so, which counts about 75%.
Did you say 7 or 8 billion? I stand to be corrected, please.
No, it's about 5 billion.
$5 billion.
Yes, please.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. I'll be coming back to you again about going forward. How do we improve the sector to contribute more to the economy? But let me bring in the businessmen, the manufacturers. Let me bring in Sechuma Kwabo, and then I'll go to Dr. Samankra. AGI Industries, I know you are worried about the cost of credit. Is that still a major concern for you, or we are indeed in challenging times? So, bitter pill now.
Well, thank you, George, and good evening to your viewers. Yes, cost of credit has always been an issue for businesses, especially the manufacturers, because you are borrowing to do business and it's part of your cost of operation. And therefore, when the policy rate is raised, normally it implies that cost of credit is going to go up. And for our SMEs who do not have a choice but constantly go to the banks and get overdraft and other forms of credit, is truly an issue. So it's a big issue. And when the policy rate is raised this way, we get concerned because your bank will also start reflecting the changes in their cost or interest rate to you. So it's really a concern. But today, I think the concern is not just the cost of credit. It's about the entire economic environment, the macroeconomic environment. It's a big issue now because cost of credit is an issue, but the exchange rate is also a big issue. And also the fact that if you sell forward, if you sell your products, by the time you recover, you're already losing. Bear in mind that when it comes to the manufacturers, most of them are importers of raw materials. The bulk of the raw materials we process in this country are imported, except perhaps those doing direct agro processing. Even some of them still import. So the importation is huge. And for that reason, when you are using foreign currency like dollar to import, and then you sell in cedis, by the time you recover your sales, you need so much money of the cedi to buy the same amount of dollars. So that is equally important. And the uncertainty around this time is indeed a big challenge for most of the businesses. And it's a really challenging times. So cost of credit is key, it's important, we are worried about it, but also equally we are worried about other factors in the macroeconomic environment that's affecting business operations.
Mr. Uncle, Mr. Chimakobu, you represent industry, but I know you also as a trained economist as well. For you, are you convinced by some of these measures that the Bank of Ghana has put out that it will bring that critically needed stability to do a business?
Well, sometimes we are torn between the rock and the hard place. Are we convinced? I think in the past, those measures have helped to stabilize the situation, has helped to halt the inflation and all that. But this time around, we don't know what is wrong. It looks like our fundamentals are so weak that even though Bank of Ghana is introducing these measures, we are not seeing the positive effect that we expect. I mean, if you look at the past 3 or so policy rate review or the Monetary Policy Committee meetings, they are always reviewing and revising the policy rate upwards. So one would have expected that by now, inflation would have come down drastically, but it's not happening. So it means that there is something more to it than merely increasing the policy rate. So that particular measure, I'm not saying it's not a good measure. As Prof. Bambatin explained, there are other considerations as well. It's not purely on the basis of reducing inflation or the fact that it is going to increase cost of credit, but also other considerations come into play. So Bank of Ghana, in their view, may think this is the best policy. For us at the business end, we look at the results. What is the outcome of those policies that you are putting in place? And for me, the outcome has not been that positive. It's not significantly changed the situation. We still have inflation going up in spite of the fact that we continue increasing the policy rate. It also means that there are several other things we need to do in order to improve the situation. So some of the measures that Bank of Ghana is planning to introduce, discussions with the mining sector and to ensure that the export proceeds are repatriated home and being able to even buy the dollars that they get. It's all measures that we need to see. For now, it's very difficult to predict the situation. No one can tell what particular measure will be the game changer. A combination of things must happen. So we need to monitor the situation and see. But I think what we are finding ourselves in now is quite a challenging one.
Indeed, challenging times. Let me bring in Dr. Samankra. He's president of the African Investment Group, an investor trading in the commodity space. I mean, Doc, for you, you play in the investment space. What are your colleague businessmen across the world telling you, and what do they want?
First of all, George, good evening, and how are you doing?
Good evening to your honorable panel, and good evening to your cherished listeners. Just go straight to your point. Will the Bank of Ghana policies that they put in place address the issue? No. I have said it several times. As long as we're honest with the diagnosis, where economic policy has failed, where ideology has blinded us, or where we have missed the obvious, we can certainly put our economy back in order. But if we're not honest with the diagnosis and we keep using technicalities in addressing these issues, we will never get a solution. What am I saying this? Well, you and I know critically well the problems which causes this currency depreciation. We need to take leadership and address it head on. Instead of using all these technicalities, changing of policy rates and so forth, they're all very good measures. But we've tried it over the period, and there hadn't been solutions to this problem. You remember when we spoke the last time on this topic, I just say that it's become a cyclical issue. And if we don't sort out the fundamentals, we'll be sitting there again and discussing this issue. So what am I saying is, we need to look critically, first of all, the Bank of Ghana's functions of supervision has to be critically looked at. There's a lot of flight of dollars in from our economy. The telcos, the foreign banks, most traders operating these supermarkets are flying in the dollars on the speed, on a regular basis. How do we review these policies? How do we address it? The mining sector, the small-scale mining sector, outpace the bigger scale. So it's free to chew down. And it's very difficult to raise the necessary taxes or revenue from these small scales. How do we address this issue? Again, a lot of these West African countries are all running into Ghana, buying dollars from here. It's so easy for Nigerians. All these issues are critical. So what I'm saying is, let's look at the technicalities, but let's be real and get into what is actually causing the depreciation of the city.
But Sam, sorry to cut in. Isn't it one step a day at a time? Some will say that right now we are in a hole. What do we take now to get out? Then we look at these medium to long term issues.
We have taken the measures, but as we are speaking today is 1:10. Let's be honest about the situation and address it head on. If we're going to be sitting here and talking about technicalities, then yes, we can put up all these economic policies on. But our city don't have a value. Nobody wants it as a medium of as a store of value. It's only a medium of exchange, as I've said it severally.
But Sam, sorry again, you are into trade finance and everything. How bad is the situation right now for you as an investor, as somebody who's into commodity trading?
Listen, John. Yeah. It's a crisis situation. And again, I'm asking the president to take leadership here. I mean, he spoke to us very well during the COVID period that we know how to build our economies. And we don't know how to raise lives, which was very powerful and very motivating, and he put us all behind him. Such steps needs to be taken. It's a crisis, and leadership needs to be taken. The president needs to address it head on, put up the measures that they have in place to address it, to take off the speculation and the panic from the market, and let's sit down collectively and put value to our city. How do we put value to our city? From now to the time that we're able to have a very solid foundation, so that when there's issues, international issues like what we're going through happens, we'll be able to sustain. That needs to be done. Like I recommended earlier, for me, I think we need to peg it. We have to peg our cedi against the dollar at 1:10. We should hit it here now. We should now start looking at local homegrown policies and address these issues that is causing our city not to have value. People have seen intrinsic value in storing the dollar. So as long as we keep doing the cosmetic work, the value is still there in the dollar. So how do we now try and shift people, the demand from people demanding from the dollar to the cedi? How do we get people's interest into the cedi? It's only when we have value. So these measures, when you peg it, people know at least for the next 5 years, it's 1 to 10. Psychologically, you are saying, hey guys, this people can't keep the dollar. Then you start implementing homegrown policies. Create an enabling environment. Bring these, companies that are the fridges, all these white goods to come in here to assemble and sell in cities. Give incentives to the automobile industry. Let's have these locally so that at least once we have that and there's value in our city, we're able to have a fundamental. And then when there are international issues like this, we'll be able to sustain it. Or else we'll come in here, talk about monetary policies, we'll come in here changing the goalposts, and the real issues will not be addressed. So, George, I'm just saying, let's take leadership. Let the president come address the issue head on as a national crisis. Put steps in place as exactly what we are going to do to address the issue, build the confidence. Financial markets is all about information, positive information. Once this information are able to sieve through the economy, it will at least bring some sort of stability. And then we sit down collectively. This is not just one man issue, it's a whole teamwork where we start placing policies one after the other. And this should be done immediately. Now, really.
Interesting. So I'll come back to you about, for you, whether some of these immediate steps is going to bring about the index stability and the confidence building. But let me get back to Professor Boating. He's the head of the accounts department at the University of Ghana, Legon. But Prof, I mean, in all these discussions, there's been argument about whether the right tools are being used. It's a fiscal thing, it's not a monetary thing, and all those things. I mean, for you, what is your thoughts and commentary on this whole argument about it's not a monetary thing, so Bank of Ghana should just maybe go and sleep, if I can use that expression, and let's push the fiscal? Or maybe it's a mix of the two. Let's still do the supply-driven inflation cure, and let's deal with the demand-driven inflation cure. Monetary policy issues out, and then the fiscal also comes on board to complement.
Well, I think before I answer that question, I think your question must also be framed in another way. Say that if the Bank of Ghana has not stepped in, where will you have been with regard to the cedi? Perhaps we will have been in 20 or 25. So in economics, there's something we call counterfactual. So if the problem is coming and they don't even step in at all, perhaps we would have been in the hundreds. Maybe it is because of the fact that they have stepped in with the policy rate, using the policy rate to at least be able to bring some of these
Prof, sorry for a very rude intervention. Am I getting from you that if the BOG had not done anything, we had argued that it's a fiscal thing, inflation might have been in the hundreds by now?
Exactly. So when we are analyzing policies, we need to look at the other side. So if it has not been done, what would have been the situation? Now it has been done and we are here. It is very difficult for you to measure whether indeed the policy is not working. And I think we need to put that in perspective. And coming to your question, fiscal and monetary are supposed to play complementary role. Fiscal cannot stand alone and monetary cannot stand alone. Remember, in the economic management, the simple accounting that we see, all the tax revenues that are collected are supposed to be lodged at the central bank. So the central bank is the government's bank. So whatever the fiscal does, it has to be complemented by the monetary. And whatever the monetary does, it must be complemented by the fiscal. So the fiscal and monetary are supposed to complement each other. So it is very difficult, and I think we need to look at where the inflation is coming from. Now, if you just look at it bluntly, you may see it as supply-side inflation, and therefore the central bank doesn't have any role to play. And I think I started by saying, then you have to break down the inflation. Where is the inflation coming from? And I'm happy my good brother from AGI mentioned that it is not only inflation, but the exchange rate depreciation is also affecting their business. So if exchange rate depreciates, it affects importation of raw materials, it goes into the cost of production, it also brings out inflation as a bigger problem. And therefore, when you have inflation coming, it cannot solely be a supply side kind of thing. There is also demand element that feeds into supply. So in the wisdom of economic management and macroeconomic management framework, you need to look at all these and see where the major thing is coming from. So if the exchange rate is the bigger issue, and from where I sit, I think that is the bigger issue driving inflation. And you can look at inflation from January up to now. The moment the exchange rate depreciates, you know it reflects on fuel prices. Fuel price becomes what? Cost push. So it means that there is some kind of demand element there moving into supply. And therefore, you cannot have the fiscal standing alone and the monetary standing alone. They need to play a complementary role to be able to salvage the situation. Now, the point that was made by Dr. Ankra is very important. I don't think the central bank is sitting down without looking at it. I think many of these measures have come up, that the central bank supervision should also look at how they can manage the forex. I think I'm on record to have said that it looked like Ghana might be the only country where you can walk into Forex Bureau and change your dollar or CD without being asked of any identity. And when this happens, it means that we are selling dollars and buying dollars outside the banking system. And that when that happens, you realize that you have a lot of money outside the banking system, and the Bank of Ghana will not get the needed dollars to be able to do its business.
But
So
I just want to come in
aspect,
quickly, just a quick one. And these proposals are being on board always. How do you tread cautiously in trying to implement such a program in an open economy so that, again, you don't drive away these investors that might be bringing in that critical effects into the economy?
No. So I'm sure in the banking system, the Bank of Ghana is able to monitor all the deposit or the drawer that are going on. So if you have forex bureaus and we have given them license to operate, I think it is important that a platform is built. So if money flows from the banking system into the forex bureaus, when it is going into, let's say you are selling it to, let's say, Mr. Tum Akwabwa, we know that he's an industrialist, and he will go in there with his ID. So you'll be able to trace that this money was sold to Mr. Tum Akwabwa. And therefore, when he also brings in dollars and go to forex bureaus and also send in money, it's also captured that this is the person who sent it. You go to Kenya, you go to South Africa, you go to many of these countries, at least your identity is important. Money is not like tomatoes. Money is not like Kobe. You need to see how best the way you operate, the way the banks operate. And therefore, you are able to ask them to you can increase their reserves and be able to reduce liquidity. I think it is important that the forex bureaus are put on a platform and be able to monitor all these so that money that are being sold like tomatoes, at least we'll be able to curb it. And also, I think many people are even buying our dollars and sending them to Niger, Burkina Faso, Nigeria, and so on. If we are able to put some of these measures there, if I'm going to buy dollars from Forex Bureau and my ID is there, I cannot buy that foreign currency and go and sell it on the black market easily. And I think some of these structural issues must be resolved. In addition to the interest rate policy that the central bank is implementing.
Let me bring in Suleiman Kony, Chief Executive of the Ghana Chamber of Mines. Whilst we also try to seek your support in all these things, for you in the extractive industry, what should also be done for you now to more accelerate your contribution to us in these times? Yeah, Mr. Kony, if you can unmute, the question that I was just trying to find out from you is that what do you think also should be done for you and your members in these times to ensure that...
I think essentially it has to do with providing security for the industry. The security situation in the industry is quite dire. We all know what is happening within the sub-region, and it has been a major concern to us. We have been engaging with government about how to prop up security within the industry. So that is one. The other one has to do with consultation prior to policy implementation. And you remember what I said, that especially on these novel, initiatives, we've had various conversations with government, i.e. The Bank of Ghana, as well as the Ministry of Finance and our sector ministry regarding what we can do to support over the last few years. So I think it's important that we need to deepen that, more collaboration, little surprises, as much as possible, no surprises, to make sure that we're always on the same page. I think we have a country to build, and the mining industry is a core part of it. And if we have a relationship that allows for open dialogue regarding policy decisions, I think it would be a fillip towards the growth and development of the industry. So security is a major issue for us. And like I said, we continue to engage, and hopefully in the next few months, we should be able to get a resolution. But otherwise, I think that generally the climate is quite positive, but we will require that even before we implement any policy initiatives, we should have deep collaboration, deep engagement, so that we can together fashion the policy in such a way that it will not adversely affect our industry, even as we want to help grow and develop the country at the same time.
Mr. Connie, earlier when you were explaining to us, you told us that this is an arrangement that you already have with the commercial banks in terms of this voluntary surrender and all the rest. I mean, you already done some deals already with some of your members in terms of selling the gold to the Bank of Ghana. All other things being equal, when are you hoping that this surrendering exercise, if I can use that in quote, could commence to the Bank of Ghana? Not exactly, but period. Let me use that.
Well, I spoke about two legs of the initiatives. One has to do with the gold purchase program, as well as the sale of Forex. And like I said, on the sale of Forex, it's not a new thing. We had the mandatory surrender, which had actually been varied in the last 6 years or so. So going back to say that we need to sell a part of our gold revenue to the Bank of Ghana, I think it's something which mining companies are not against, so to speak. It's just the manner in which it is done, the quantum you're talking about. And again, the Bank of Ghana has shared a framework with us, which mining companies are actually going through. So essentially, there's no pushback there, but we should just make sure that even as we want to transact between the mining companies and the Bank of Ghana, they will not be adversely affected. And those are the conversations which we're actually going through at the moment. And even before we settle on an ideal framework, you've seen the willingness of some mining companies to actually transact, given where we are as a state. The other one has to do with the gold buying program, which for me is quite novel. And I mentioned Asante Gold, a member of the chamber through Menzim Gold Mining, having already done 100 million forward sales of gold to the Bank of Ghana. And then Newmont also having gone ahead sometime in June to also start, selling part of their gold to the Bank of Ghana. And I'm sure before long, you have other mining companies also, following suit, just to make sure that we also help with the strategy of the Bank of Ghana to rein in all the macroeconomic challenges we are having, so that we can have a relatively stable environment for business. Thank you.
So by next month, some deal could be closed in terms of the FX supply, right?
Well, I can't put some dates and timelines to it, but all I'm saying is that the conversations are ongoing.
Okay.
We have received the framework. Our member companies are going through it, and like I said, even ahead of that, some member companies have already transacted. Okay. I know of a major mining company having already done, I think, about $6 million or so.
Wow.
And there are plans to do another $40 million in the coming days. So yes. Yes, there is, willingness of some mining companies to actually come to the table to support, which for us is a good thing.
Mr. Sechkum Okobo, as we wrap up, for you as manufacturers, and also be coming to Dr. Samankra, for you, the way forward, are these things enough to help with the stability going forward, i.e. the cedi, or you think that something else can still be done as you try and wrap up in your final thoughts in about a minute?
Well, I think different actors should have different approaches to things. On the part of the businesses, they have to manage their situation very well. This is not a time to do investment. This is a time to focus on keeping your market, keeping your suppliers a bit happy, and then negotiating with your banks to ensure that you stay within the constraints that you have. On the part of government, beyond the policy rate and all the issues that we're talking about, I think government may also have to quickly look at its indebtedness and renegotiate some of the facilities. Because you see, what government needs to do and what businesses are expecting is stability. And the stability comes when there's confidence. So government needs to renegotiate some of its arrangements so that its revenue streams, for example, is assured, a reasonable bit of it is generated. Government also needs to cut down its expenditure. Of course, cutting down expenditure, you have to be careful, because when you cut down expenditure drastically in certain areas, you cause contraction. That's also not good enough. And therefore, it is the essential things that you need to focus on, but things that will help the productive sector to generate more resources for you in terms of taxes and all that. So government strategy will have to gradually change. And as Dr. Samankra said, this is the time to focus on the productive sector. You know, if we place a lot of emphasis on production of goods in the country, we will reduce the pressures on our city. So that would help a great deal. So a combination of things must happen at the business level and then at government level. And I think if you put it well, we should be able. But for businesses, what we are expecting at this particular moment is the stability. We all know that businesses need funds, but it's not a time to ask for government for funds. It's the stability of the macroeconomic environment that is most important.
Dr. Samankra, way forward as we wrap up on this in about a minute or something, Doc, for you, the way forward then to hold the bleeding as a doctor treating a patient.
Well, thanks, George. For me, the fundamentals are very key here. If we don't address the fundamentals and we keep doing cosmetic work, we will come back to this vicious cycle. And what are the fundamentals? Our balance of payments is deep negative. Our fiscal deficit is negative. We have no access to international borrowing. We've been downgraded. We need to find ways and means of how these fundamentals would be addressed. And once we find ways and means by going by the recommendation I've made previously and I've said a bit today, we'll be able to have a sustainable base to build on, so that in future, when all these shakeups come again from international, issues like what we're going through at the moment, we would not be going through this panic that we are now. I strongly recommend that we need to put our fundamentals in place.
Okay.
And that needs to be done now.
Prof, in 30 seconds for you as an economist, the way forward.
In addition to what my colleagues have recommended, I just want to move away from the technical economics and say that money doesn't like noise. And I think policymakers, government, executives should look at and check their pronouncement. We are in an era where our balance of payment is dominated by foreigners who are holding domestic bonds. So they sit behind their computers and then look at what is happening in Ghana as to whether their investment will go waste. So if a minister or government official make certain statements that tends to give doubts about the government ability to be able to manage the economy, we will continue to go down the drain. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Dr. Samankra, Techuma Kwabua, Mr. Kony. I appreciate your time so much. This has been PM Express Business Edition as we looked at the city's instability, inflation, and whether the Bank of Ghana measures can save us or help us. And you heard from the experts. I know the debate will still go on in your homes and your offices as in the best way forward in dealing with the situation right now. My name is George Wiafe. It's been PM Express. Have a good day.